All right, then we turn our attention to the SEC championship game in Atlanta. The number one team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs, trying to get an SEC championship win. They were not able to get last year against the Alabama Crimson Tide, but the SEC West foe is LSU. The Tigers, of course, enter the game with cleaning some dirt off their knees and some egg off their face after going into College Station and taking a big old L at the hand of Jimbo Fisher and an Aggies team that will not be in the postseason. So as we look at, where Georgia is at in this game, the spread is very, very large. I want to start with, what about LSU would inspire confidence that we're going to see the threat of an upset? How does that look? How does the game look such that we are looking up in the mid to late third quarter with sort of a raised eyebrow thinking, wait, is Jaden Daniels going to do this? What needs to happen for LSU to be in this game late?
Remember Jaden Daniels having that game of his life against Alabama?
Yeah.
He needs to have a much better game against Georgia.
Better than that unbelievable game.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. He also needs to not be in a walking boot, which he was seen in. I think that's one of the reasons why this spread has gone to where it's been. Yeah, because his game is so dependent on his mobility. When I look at this Georgia thing, Georgia, their ceiling is clearly really high. They flexed it twice this year, basically, against Tennessee and against Oregon. And then I guess in the second half against Mississippi State, they really turned it on. Like, oh, by the way, we're still Georgia. Watch this. But they don't always play, like a 30. If you use like a power rating system that's like 30 to negative 30, or if you use something that goes, with 100 being top and, like 70-ish being average, they don't always play like a 30 or like a 100. We know they have that gear, but they do screw around in games this year more than I think they did last year. They're not always in kill mode. And if they play like the regular Georgia is probably like a 26, 25 type thing, to where they'd be like a 24, 25, 26 point favorite over an average team on a neutral, right? Then you could get them if they don't bring their A game and they get turnovers. But man, LSU recently, that's a bad game against Arkansas, right? I mean, personally, I think that's a bad performance against Arkansas. Arkansas got beat by Missouri. They got beat by Liberty. That's a really bad game against A&M. LSU is sort of limping to the finish here after beating Alabama. They're UAB just not athletically in the same class as them. So I would also point out Mike Denbrock is LSU's OC, right? Kirby has faced him both times. He has not scored 20 points yet. He also faced Nick last year when he was Cincinnati's OC. They scored 6 points. LSU's got to find a way to get to like 28 to win this game, unless you think their defense is going to hold Georgia at like 17, which seems unlikely.
Don't you think that's one of the recipes, though? That you see the offense sputter like they did against Kentucky, like they did against Mizzou. Like that, to me, where if Jaden Daniels isn't able to have the game of his life, the one thing you could hope for is that the offense is sputtering for Georgia. Maybe you get a turnover. If you can contain the tight ends in the run game, put it on Stetson Bennett's shoulders. Don't give up the big plays that maybe you can contend and keep it tight to where at least Georgia all of a sudden is a little bit nervous in the second half. And then, like, to your point, Bud, about the killer mode, like the kill mode of them there's not that much urgency in the back of their mind. They know same thing. Now, Bama's a different story, but in the back of their mind, they're like, if we lose, we're still playing for the championship. There is something about that mentality that maybe you could catch them than that if you're LSU. But I think other than that, we're all in agreement. Like, it's a completely different, there's a roster advantage. Across the board, there's just advantages across the board. So you have to have some wonky things happen, turnovers, and getting stops.
But the one seed gets to pick its semifinal, correct?
True.
And one of them is the Peach Bowl, correct? They've got plenty.
Yes, but if you don't get to pick, nobody else is gonna. Pick the home field.
Do you think Michigan would pick the Peach Bowl
over? What's the other option?
Fiesta.
Yeah. closer to home.
Unless they don't have to play Georgia in that one.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it would. Depending on if Georgia somehow fell to the 4 seed, no, Michigan's not going to pick the Peach Bowl. But it's at this matchup, like you mentioned, Georgia. If it doesn't go into kill mode, it can still beat LSU
for sure.
LSU has to be perfect to beat Georgia, and LSU has looked far from perfect. In the one area where like I said, I think Jaden Daniels has to have the game of his life, that or they have to force a bunch of turnovers defensively. Stetson has to go YOLO and make passes that aren't there and give LSU extra possessions. But like LSU special teams have killed it all season long in a lot of spots. Like you think about what happened in that Tennessee game, their special teams killed them before the game started. And if you look like field position wise, offensively, their average field position ranks 125th in the nation. Georgia defensively ranks 5th. On the other side, defensively, LSU, because of its punting units, its field position ranks 76th. It's like little things like that against Georgia. You have to have you can't be giving yourself a long field against this Georgia defense and think you've got a realistic shot of moving the ball and scoring. You don't. And that's the like they have to do things I haven't seen them do all year, because it's going to sound disrespectful as hell. I know they won the SEC West. They're not a bad team, but they're not that good either. Like we've seen them look really, really bad. I do not think this LSU team is that good. I think this LSU team had a great game against Alabama, and then Alabama also lost to Tennessee.
So I think that athletically and talent-wise, LSU's defense can, if, unless they're being put in horrible positions, which is possible, they can get this game to the second half where it is still a game. But it will require Jaden Daniels to be able to make some throws, which brings me to my, most interesting wrinkle here. Georgia did a really, 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 really good job against Tennessee and that passing attack and against those wide receivers. Is LSU the second best wide receiver room that the Georgia defense has faced all season? Is it the best wide receiver room? Again, we still need Jaden Daniels to be able to make those throws right there.
Did we lose Chip? Or we lost?
He lost you for a second.
Okay.
Sorry, you're back.
When you consider, are we good?
Mm-hmm.
When you consider some of the passing attacks that this Georgia defense has faced this season and the groups of wide receivers that the secondary has been forced. Ooh, StreamYard's jumping all around.
Yeah, what is going on over here?
I was worried it was me at work.
Man,
you think it's me. All the squares are jumping around?
Yeah, we're moving spots. We're jockeying for position.
Whoa. Okay, so is that a possibility where if it's close late, LSU's wide receivers are in a position where they could be able to make those one-on-one plays against a Kirby Smart defense and be able to make something special happen for LSU?
Yeah, certainly. Like that is a path that Georgia or that LSU can keep this thing close and potentially beat Georgia if their guys just ball out and make plays. I think I like Tennessee's receiving core over LSU's, but I do think that they are somewhat comparable, right?
And they had opportunities that were missed. I mean, there was a couple plays that Georgia probably still wins the game. Don't get me wrong, but they would have changed the complexion of the game. A couple of those go routes were just slightly overthrown.
Pressure does a lot of stuff for your defense. Yep. That's going to be the thing. Can LSU keep that front off of Jaden Daniels? Because we've seen he's not the greatest passer in the world. Get him pressured in the pocket, he's not going to get better.
Is there any chance, speaking of ways you could pull it off? I mean, we all watched the Arkansas game. Who won that game? Harold Perkins Jr., like almost by himself. And if he has another otherworldly performance like that, gets after Stetson Bennett, sacks him strip fumble, that's the type of performances you're going to need if you're LSU.
I agree.
A&M went at him though directly,
right? I guarantee you, Georgia probably will too.
Yes, yeah,
he's a little light.
Is Georgia the best offensive line LSU will have faced?
Probably,
I think so, and I think it's by a lot.
I mean,
I'm also interested
in the country, so
yeah, like in the mobile quarterback stuff. Georgia handled Tennessee pretty well mobile quarterback wise. They handled Auburn well mobile quarterback wise. Kent State did a little bit of stuff against them, obviously, but that was kind of a weird game. Florida, they for the most part bottled up Anthony Richardson, and then he had a couple nice runs, right? So, and he got dinged in that game, if I recall. I don't know. Like I think LSU may have a shot, but it's going to take Georgia not playing to Georgia's ceiling. You need a like a C game from Georgia, and maybe you need like what if one of their good players or quarterback gets dinged and Kirby's like, well, we're already in the playoff. I'm going to sit you for the rest of this just so you don't get hurt more.
And as for Georgia playing in their best, I'm pretty sure they will, because they have kind of coasted through games. But if you look at how Georgia has performed in all its big games, like the games that quote unquote count the most, Oregon 49-3, Auburn 42-10, Florida 42-20, Tennessee only 27-13, but they basically stopped playing.
They called the dogs off.
Yeah. It's like when they are in a game against the top competition or like the rivals, they have smoked them all. The only times they've kind of messed around were against teams that weren't really a threat to them to begin with.